So here's our deep dive video on Ratigan. So this deep dive is going to be for those of you who have seen this character, understand what he kind of generally already does. You have an idea how to play the character. This guy is going to be more for if you really want to win with the character in a competitive environment and you want to know generally how to do all the tricks. Now, I'll say this up front. This is all in my opinion. This is all after many hours and many games of playing this game with the rat and against the rat. So take this all with a grain of salt. This is one person's opinion. Do not think this is the absolute one way you have to think about playing this character. I will say, though, I do feel like I'm in a pretty good position of saying what I'm about to say about the rat. And this is also not going to be talking about necessarily where he fits in the metagame of this game. We're just going to really talk about how to be really awesome with the rat. So what's Rat trying to do? By default, he's always trying to get the robot queen to Buckingham Palace. So if we go pull out the card right here, the robot queen is a 15 cost item that, when played, starts at the secret lair and has to start your turn at the Buckingham Palace. Now, the thing with this card, though, is that it can be discarded. So if I go pull out our friend Basil of Baker Street over here, if Basil is played or moved to the Robot Queen's location, that's going to get discarded, and then we flip over to the Rat. Now, this is what makes Ratigan super interesting, because a lot of his deck is actually focused around both of the goals, and that's something you have to keep in mind at all times when playing with Ratigan, that everything he's got in his deck is really kind of geared towards, no pun intended, because we'll get to those gears, both goals. And that's what also makes him super interesting to play. I would categorize Ratigan, and this is some of the new stuff you might hear for the first time, as a balanced character in Disney Villainous. Now, what does that mean exactly? Ratigan has a little bit of everything. Has a little bit of all the tools, a little bit of, in terms of the goals, he kind of has both style of goals, where his starting goal is essentially play an item, move it to the end, start your turn with it. Well, his second goal is a typical Vanquish goal. There's nothing unique about it. Basil, it will be immediately out once the Mouse Queen is discarded, and then you have to kill Basil. It's no different than any of the other defeat a hero goals, except that there's nothing unique attached to it. He doesn't have to be at a unique location. He doesn't have to be defeated with a particular ally. All the same stuff. Now, when I'm talking about balance, and the reason for that is that we look through a lot of Ratigan's deck. A lot of the tools, like I said, go towards both things. So stuff like the uniform, stuff like the bell, stuff like the airship. All these cards can actually go towards all of the different things that he wants to do. Now, when you're playing the rat, what do you want to do turn one? The main thing you probably want to go ahead and do turn one, let's remove Basil so we can kind of see what we got here. You probably want to go to Flowerston's Toy Shop. You always do. One of the things that Ratigan's always going to need, he's going to need money. Lots of his things aren't necessarily super expensive to play, at least up front. And you want to go ahead and start to get a cash flow going so that way you can start playing stuff out. Now, with this, let's kind of talk, and this is something I actually want to talk about with all the characters, is kind of like, what does your starting hand look like? What do you do with your starting hand when you get it? So, this is my starting hand. Alright, so I got Extravagant, a Gear, a Ruffians, and Devious. So, your kind of focus in your starting hand is that you want to try to go for stuff like gears. You want to go for stuff that are like other items in the deck, like tools. You know, it's not horrible to have Royal Robes going ahead and put that out. And I actually would go ahead, and this is probably a super controversial opinion, probably go ahead and play the airship. These are items that you probably, if you have in your hand turn one, go ahead and play them. Now, other cards, stuff like Ruffians. Ruffians in the early game aren't super powerful, because really all you're doing is that you're going to be playing Ruffians to, if you're at Toy Shop or any other location and you play them, you're just going to try to gain power. Not super useful. So it's okay to go ahead and probably discard this turn one. Now, with Extravagant, same deal. Get rid of that stuff. Chuck that card. Devious, keep it. One of the things that, and we'll talk about this when we get to other villains in the game that have these fate condition cards, you always want to kind of hold on to those. Unless you're really digging for particular cards and you're getting towards the end of your deck and you still haven't found it, don't get rid of Devious. Always keep it. It's always a solid card. Now, with these items, one of the things that people ask is like, where should I place these items? Because kind of one of the gimmicks that's in Basil's deck is that not only does he have these 2 call for helps, so what the call for help does is that it allows you to either find Basil and play him if he's not out, or you can move him to a new location. And if he's moved to a new location, he can discard. On top of that, if there is a hero at a location and you find this magical little card called Sabotage, which I completely skipped over when I was going through here. There you go. Sabotage will discard any of the items except for the Robot Queen. Any of the items that exist within Ratigan's deck. So a lot of it's about getting rid of the items. Now, how do you play these out? What I would recommend by default is to go ahead and play items to the secret lair. Always play them to the secret lair. The reason for that is obvious. The top portion of the secret lair has no actions on top of it. So this means that if a hero gets played there, including Basil, they aren't going to be affecting your action economy. Because one of the things that Ratigan is relatively good at is keeping his action economy in a pretty good state. Most of the time, by default, if they're pulling another hero out, they'll probably go for, and over here at Buckingham Palace, to block your fate. And after that, they'll probably start targeting Flaversham's Toy Shop and then Big Ben. They will probably never target the secret lair. It's just never going to happen. So stacking all the items at the secret lair is probably a good call. Now, let's say, and this will probably happen a lot, you get a hero that gets moved to the secret lair. What do you do if you have items there, or you still need to play more items? Play the items to a location that currently doesn't have a hero. Because if you start playing more cards to the secret lair, what's going to happen is that this location right here is now fodder for stuff like Sabotage. Or if you play Basil out, he'll get played there. Stuff like that. You don't want that to happen. So start spreading your items out. So that way, then it's going to have to be forcing heroes to be played at those locations, making so Sabotage is not going to be as strong. You can then keep those very powerful items over. That's something I actually would recommend a lot of players to do, is that if you start to see a situation where a hero is out and you want to play a powerful item like the airship or tools, play it to a different location that doesn't have a hero. So that way, it's going to take some more effort to get rid of it. By default, Basil is the only card that's going to actually be able to be played or moved to that location. Stuff like that. That'll help cover your bases there. Now, with the items, you want to focus on gears. Gears and tools, I would say, are your first 2 priorities that you want to find. If you don't find them right away, just dig for them. The reason for that is because that Robot Queen is incredibly pricey, and it's going to take a lot of money to get there. Let's go ahead and pull her out for the sake of stuff. So, what are some ways to get there? One of the things that's interesting about Ratigan is that his deck is overall pretty cheap. And he actually has some pretty good ways to gain power. You can go here, gain 3. He can go here, gain 2 if it's not covered. He can even go here and gain 1 even if it is covered. So think about that. In 3 turns, let's say early game, that's already 6 power. That's a lot of power on the board. Towards your goal. That's not including the fact that you're probably going to spend some of it to play gears and tools and stuff like that. And you're already going to be upgrading towards the amount of power that you're going to need to play the Robot Queen. It's pretty solid. He does not actually usually have a power issue. What's also nice, too, is that we go pull out Greatest Criminal Mind. Greatest Criminal Mind can be used in 2 ways. You can use it to fish for cards. So especially if you're at locations like Secret Lair or Big Ben, you can play Greatest Criminal Mind and draw some cards. So that way you don't necessarily have to discard to try to go get some more stuff in your hand and have more options for yourself. AKA, theme of this entire thing, options. Now, you could also use it to gain 2 power. It sometimes can come in pretty clutch, especially when you're getting close to trying to gain money to play the Robot Queen, where you go here, play Greatest Criminal Mind, gain your money, and then all of a sudden you have enough to play the Robot Queen. Bam. What can you do? It's a very versatile tool. It's really helpful. Now, when you decide to do either one, it's kind of up to you. Gain 2 power is only if you think you're really low on power, or you absolutely need the 2 power, you got the Robot Queen in hand, and you want to instantly be able to play it, so that way you have enough power to get it out there. Early game, probably drawing the cards is better. A lot of times what I do is I'll go to Flaversham's Toy Shop, especially if I have a crap hand. I'll play Greatest Criminal Mind, and then I'll draw the 2 cards, and even if the 2 cards are bad, I can just discard them. So there's more cards that I've actually filtered through. You could even, if for some reason you have Greatest Criminal Mind twice and you already have a garbage hand, you could do it twice while going to Flaversham's toy shop, if able, and then discard the rest of the stuff. It's pretty satisfying to do, to get all that deck recycle. And in theory, if you have draw 4 cards and then you draw 4 cards from playing 2 Greatest Criminal Minds, you can basically get rid of almost a third of your deck in one go. Granted, the likeliness of that happening isn't that high, but you got to keep those probabilities in mind when playing that card. So some other things to think about. I saw this was a question in the Discord. Flaversham. So one of the things that you will notice is that our buddy Fidget, wherever he is, first off, a powerful ally. He is a 1-cost, 3 strength, which is kind of rare in this game. But the catch is the fact that when he's played, he fetches Scrooge McDuck's voice actor, wherever the heck he is. Oh, there you go, Flaversham. There you go. I forgot where he was. Plays him in the toy shop. When do you do this? So it's kind of a gamble, but the nice thing about Ratigan is the fact that I believe it's 3 copies of Capture. Yes, he has 3 copies of Capture in his deck. So if you are deck chucking stuff at the beginning of the game, chances of you drawing a Capture are pretty high. So what I would recommend you do is that if you're going to go to a Flaversham's toy shop, especially early game or another location, first what I would do is make sure you play Fidget when you're at the toy shop. You want to get the most bang for your buck out of this location before Flaversham destroys those 2 options at the top, which is pretty detrimental, especially at the early game for Ratigan. But then what you can do is that you can go to places like the Secret Lair, Fate, play a card, try to start cycling a little bit that way. You can go to Buckingham Palace, Fate, discard, all that stuff. That's another good way to chuck through your deck, get the cards you need, and then you can go try to grab that Capture card and then put Flaversham over there. It's a really solid call. Now, would you focus on it? No. Something you have to keep in mind is that with the Gear card, which for those of you who have never played this character, I'll explain, is that Gears makes it so you pay 1, and when you want to play an item from your hand, you can discard a Gear and make it reduce its cost by 3. There are 5 of these in the deck. Now, you probably won't need to use all 5. You probably, at the average, will use maybe about 3, maybe 4. And with Flaversham, you might only need to use 2 at most times. Like I said, Ratigan doesn't really usually have a power problem, so most of the time you probably will be able to spend a lot of power to play out the Robot Queen. So, yeah, I would just wait and go here, make sure you burn all your options, play Fidget there. I would not recommend doing Fidget or playing Fidget when you're at any other location, because like I said, you're playing Flaversham here. You are immediately eliminating one of your prime spaces, a place where you can play 2 cards, which is really good to play 2 Gears, or a Gear and an item, and discard and gain 3 money. You don't want to do that. And the worst thing you have to do is that you would have to play Flaversham, you're not drawing Capture, and then you have to burn a card like Fidget or a Ruffian to kill him. Not super solid. So, strongly recommend making sure that you play him at this location, get through all the actions, and then kind of go about. Now, let's talk about this card. Let's talk about Fidget's List. So of all the items that are in Ratigan's deck, my personal opinion is that Fidget's List is not a very good card. The reason being is that what it is, it's essentially scrying, but you have to activate it to activate its effect, which is kind of bogus. And on top of that, there are tons of items in the deck. So really what you're doing is like you are trying to use this to find a particular item. And granted, with Fidget's List being the worst item, all the other items are good. You got Airship, you got Gears, Royal Robes, Tools, Robot Queen, all that stuff. So, yeah, it's good, but you got to keep in mind that, there are better activates at this location. One of the biggest things I'll talk about here is that a lot of people sleep on Royal Robes. Royal Robes is incredibly good because you can literally go to the Secret Lair, activate it, gain 2 money, and then play something. It's pretty solid to make it so the Secret Lair, even though by default it doesn't have an ability to gain power, have the ability to gain power. It's pretty awesome. And especially if you play this early game, your opponent's going to start seeing that you're gaining money and fading. And then they're going to be like, oh no, I need to do something about that. And instead of maybe targeting a gear, they're actually going to target a royal robe instead, which is actually going to be beneficial to you because guess what? Yeah, the royal robes are gone, but you still got your gears. They're going to be scared of that power gain because, like I said, Ratigan doesn't really have a power problem. So if he's getting up to like 10 power right now, they're going to be scared that they're just... Ratigan's literally waiting for the robot queen to be played out and then start sailing across the sea. So... Fidget's list. If you draw it, discard it. If you're absolutely desperate for items and it's like maybe turn 3 and you haven't drawn a single one and that's the one you have in hand, maybe I would play it, but this is a very situational card. Granted, the nice thing about it is compared to some other like iffy cards in this game, it only costs 1. And in theory, if you already played tools out, you could play it for free. So it kind of depends on your situation, but most of the time, there's enough item consistency in his deck, because you have to think about this. There are 5 copies of the gears. That's 5 cards. 1 copy of tools, 6. Robes, 7. Airship, 8. Include the Robot Queen, 9. And then I believe there are 2 copies of uniform. Let me double check. 1, 2. So that's like 10, 11. So that's 11 item cards. That makes up almost over a third of the cards. Would you ever recommend discarding a gear to pay for royal robes? No. Absolutely not. That's something we'll get to with another card I will get to here in a second, but that is a great question. Speaking of, let's go ahead and talk about that card, because while we're on the topic of items. One of the cards that you'll see in Ratigan's deck, on paper it's a cool looking card. Marvelous Trap. What Marvelous Trap is, it's a 3-cost item. And what you have to do is you play it to a location. And then once you go to the secret lair, you have to spend 1 to activate it. When, at the start of your next turn, all heroes at the Marvelous Trap's location are defeated. And then you discard Marvelous Trap afterwards. Marvelous Trap, I think, is a weird card because in theory there aren't a lot of incredibly strong allies in Ratigan's deck. He doesn't really have a lot. If you take a solid look, he's got it's like 3 copies of Ruffians, Fidget, Bartholomew, Felicia. There aren't a lot. And with Marvelous Trap, it kind of turns into an ally. And he's got 2 of them. It's expensive. And this thing should come in 2 situations. So the biggest thing, like I said, Ratigan does not have a lot of allies by default. So what will happen is you might start getting a lot of these high-cost heroes out on the board, and you don't have enough strength to kill them. Now, granted, there's ways to modify their strength and do stuff. But these guys are pretty high strength, and you don't have a way to basically return allies back to your hand except for 1, but it requires another activate. Oh, I just spun them around. They're doing the spin to win here. That's when Marvelous Trap comes into play. If you know for a fact you're not going to be able to defeat these heroes quickly and they're high strength, that's when Marvelous Trap comes into play. Characters like Toby, characters like the Mouse Queen, even Basil himself, great way to get rid of those characters. Characters like Flaversham, characters like Olivia, Mrs. Judson, those are characters that you should probably be taking out normally with the allies. I would not be using Marvelous Trap, literally spending a total 4 power at its max to defeat a 2-strength hero. You have to be absolutely desperate. Now, in going along with what was said about the using royal robes with the gears, Ratigan's never power starved. I have rarely seen games where Ratigan does not have a lot of power already in hand to worry about. There shouldn't be a need to play a gears to play any of the items, including Marvelous Trap. I will say this though. Once you have played the robot, or the Robot Queen is discarded, and you're trying to defeat Basil, you might run into a problem because at that point it's going to be the late game. Your target is to kill this guy. You want him gone. So other characters, using resources on those characters is going to be really depleting your resources, slowing you down. So if you do have like a spare gear in play, and or you think like I'm not going to be able to gain enough power to really effectively do anything, Let's say you go to Flaversham's Toy Shop. Toby's here. Gain 3. Spend 1. Play the gear. Then you can go on your next turn to the secret lair, play Marvelous Trap for free with the gear, and then spend 1 to activate it. That is something I've done before to win games. That is, now, granted, if you do have lots of money still, use that money to play the Marvelous Trap. Don't waste another card, because you have to think about this. I can then go to the secret lair, and then I can go pull out another item to try to help myself out. Or not necessarily an item, but, an ally. Or, another item, and then activate. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do. So, just kind of keep that in mind with the action economy there, that if you are stuck in that situation and you absolutely need money, that is a little trick that you can do. If you have the cards in hand. Keep that in mind. But, like I said, Ratigan usually doesn't have a power problem. Let's see. Let's talk about these guys. Let me pull this guy out. Ruffians. Ruffians are some really busted stuff in this game. And what they literally are is they are a combination of using Stick With Me with a 2 strength ally. Where you go, use the action, and then do stuff. Now, by default, I know a lot of you that are probably, understand the rat, know how he works. What you're going to do, let's say you're going to Flaversham's Toy Shop. You're going to be like, all right, let's gain 3 power. Let's play the Ruffians for 2, and then use it to gain 2. So we gain our power back. Basically play to free ally, yada, yada, yada. You are not using the full potential of the Ruffians. I used to do that early game. And granted, yeah, if you're early game and there's really not much else to do, and you don't want to necessarily discard it, because like I said, Ratigan doesn't have a really good use to do... the early game, they're not going to be killing stuff. And they're going to be stuck in your hand, and you don't have a way to get it back. Yeah, go in and play him, gain the 2 power, whatnot. But later game, you don't necessarily want to be doing that to gain 2 power. You want to be abusing this to, A, Vanquish. That is 1. Ruffians are amazing. Yes, they are busted. 2, play cards. Stuff like that. And you're like, oh, why would you want to do that? Well, guess what? You are playing an ally. Let's say freaking Flaversham's over here for whatever reason. He got played. You play the Ruffians here. Oh, boy. Actually, let's go. Secret Lair. Play them there. Oh, no. What can I do? Oh, I could vanquish Flaversham and get him out of my way. So that place is cleaned up. Or, oh, I want to play a card. Let's say, for example, where is he? Where is the knucklehead? Oh. I'm trying to find him. Where is the only card that I think is useless in this Fate deck? Oh my gosh. Where is he? We're doing it live, people. Oh my gosh. Oh, he's over here, Dawson. Dawson's over here. For some godforsaken reason, Basil's out on the board. He's now 4 strength. Guess what? Go here. Play the Ruffians. Then, if you got it in hand... Oh, not Devious. Devious is not the card I'm looking for. Uniform. Kill him. There you go. Done and done. Use that play card action to abuse that stuff. It's really solid. And, something else to keep in mind, too. And we'll get to that card. When you have the Robot Queen out, wherever she is... and I don't see her there, which means she's in this conglomerate of mess somewhere. Ship, fidget. Oh no, where is it? Oh, come on. Come on. Robot Queen, there you are. Let's say you don't have the balloon. Balloon's not ready, set, go. You need to go, let's say you play Robot Queen here. Guess what? Spend 2 on the Ruffians, use that move action. Boom. Then go here. Move. And then guess what? For whatever, all intents and purposes, you gain that 2 power. You play another Ruffians over here. Boom. There you go. Move the Robot Queen. Still in essentially 1 turn, if you got the Ruffians ready to go, or not 1 turn, 2 turns, you can move the Robot Queen over. Scares them. That will literally scare your opponent, because you also got to think about it too. They're thinking about trying to find Basil. If you're playing Ruffians out and not using them to defeat anything, guess what? That right there is 4 strength towards defeating Basil. And there's only one card that can strengthen heroes in his Fate deck. So you're set. And even the same thing, too. Let's say the Mouse Queen got played out. You still want to go try to move the Robot Queen as much as possible. Because even with the Robot Queen out, they'll be tempted not to play this guy. If you put 2 Ruffians there, they are only 1 strength away from murdering her. Which doesn't take a lot. Uniform, you can even just use Bartholomew and play him out and kill him. Because he doesn't cost anything. That's 5. Mouse Queen's dead. So, that's also something else to think about. You know, not using the Ruffians just to gain money. Use them for the other actions. People forget the fact that there are other actions besides gaining money. Now, granted, you will do that sometimes. Especially early game, you might go over here, have a Ruffians, gain 3 money, try to get some extra power, all that stuff. Sometimes that might be what you need to do. But I would strongly try to save the Ruffians for those powerful other actions on the board. They are good. You can even do stuff like Secret Lair. Go over here, Robot Queen's already out. Play the Ruffians of the Secret Lair, and guess what? As soon as you play the Ruffians there, you play the airship. Or no, wait, you've already played the airship there. Ruffians, activate, all that shenanigans. There's all sorts of nutty stuff that you can do. All sorts of stuff. So take advantage of them. They're really solid. Really solid cards. Speaking of, Uniform. Uniform's a fantastic card. Like I said, since he doesn't have a lot of allies in his deck already, using Ruffians combined with a Uniform or even Bartholomew or Fidget or whatnot is a really solid mix to basically make it so even these stronger allies like Toby and the Mouse Queen, you could easily get rid of them. It might take an extra ally on top of the Uniform, but it's a pretty solid trick to get around it. And plus it's cheap, so you're not spending a whole lot of extra power to kind of kill stuff. You just have to be aware of what y'all got left in your deck. So, what other cards should I cover really fast? Felicia. She's amazing. And one of the items I actually have not talked about at all is the Bell. The Bell's a fantastic card. Don't sleep on it. It's really good. Never forget the power of the Bell. Because literally all the Bell is, you activate it and you find Felicia. Fantastic. When should Felicia be played? Here's the deal. Felicia is a relatively expensive card. Now, granted, that's what Bartholomew's use is for. He is a 0-cost ally. And the idea is that you spend 3 to play Felicia out. Discard Bartholomew, so you're only essentially paying 3 for her. And then, there you go, she's out. But, here's the other thing. Even if you're discarding a Ruffians, that is expensive. That is a 5-cost ally you're putting out there to just put her out there. I would strongly suggest, if you get Felicia in your hand, especially early, discard her. Save Felicia for the big kills. Mouse Queen, Toby, Basil. That's what you should save her for. Because, like I said, the Bell will allow you to summon her back out. So if you do discard her and you're scared, as long as you don't discard the Bell, you can get her back out. Something else to keep in mind, too, is that once you start stacking your board with all these items, and you're getting close to winning with the Robot Queen, and the opponent knows that you might be able to, Ruffians kill Basil if he gets discarded, they might go for the Bell instead of something like the airship, because they're scared of me playing the cat. So you got to think of that. Felicia's expensive. Don't use her early. Use her mid to late game when these really buff, chunky heroes are out on the board. They're kind of a nuisance. So don't play her early. Like I said, she's expensive. I think... Oh. I kind of already covered this with when I was talking about Flaversham, but Capture. Capture is kind of also another Vanquish tool, but you got to keep in mind that, like I said, you're going to be playing most of your items to the Secret Lair. Unless you got, like, those Queen's Guards that are hanging out at the Palace over here, and they're really blocking your fate and your extra card play, as I'm doing spins. Thank you, Magic Mouse. That's when I would probably use Capture. I don't know if I would use Capture for any other heroes in particular besides maybe Flaversham when he's at the toy shop. If they're at Big Ben, I would just try to vanquish them. But if the Queen's Guards keep getting played, especially if they're getting stacked, maybe I would use it. But use Capture very sparingly. Not because it's a bad card. It's just more of the fact of, and it only applies to only a certain number of the characters too. It's only 3 or less. So keep that in mind as well. And then, because if you stack them here with all your items, it's a Sabotage fodder. So you don't want to do that. I think the last thing we could talk about with the deck, and then we'll do some Q&A on the deck, is Devious and Extravagant. So, like I spoke on earlier, Devious is a really good card. Literally makes it so they only pull one fate card. It's never not a bad card, because even if something brutal was going to come up, you know, you're just slowing it down a little bit. So keep that in hand at all times, basically. Unless it's early game and you're not getting anything you need, maybe discard it. But always keep Devious in hand. Extravagant. Let's talk Extravagant. There's some nutty things that you can do with this card if you think right. Now, you have to know your opponent. And all that stuff. Quick thing before we go. Do you kill or capture Olivia? So we will actually get to that at the latter half here of the conditions, and then we'll go into that. That's actually a really good point I'll bring up. Let's talk about Extravagant. So when a player gains 3 power, you can find an item from your discard pile and put it back into your hand. What this is really good for is grabbing gears that get discarded back. That is probably the main tool you'll be using this for. However, you need to know your opponent. You need to know how much power they're going to need. You need to know how fast it's going to take for them to get the amount of power they need without getting 3 on their turn. Because what you can do, and this is something I think a lot of people are probably going to ask, is that you get the Robot Queen, all right? First or second turn. That is a card that you need to win, but it's going to clog up your hand. Do you discard it? The answer is, depends. Sometimes you have to stick with the fact that the Robot Queen's in your hand turn 1, and you just have to work around that. Those are situations where, yeah, you're going to stack up on a lot of power and try to play that as fast as possible. Just get a lot of money and play it with a lot of power. Or you can risk it and discard the Robot Queen. Now, you have to keep in mind, opponents know about this card, so they may or may not try to go for 3 power. However, you need to keep in mind that if the opponent desperately needs to get 3 power, so for example, Jafar player has no power, very likely, and they need to gain 3 power immediately to be able to play the Scarab Pendant. Because if you block their other fate area, they can't gain money. So they have to go to the Oasis to gain 3 in order to play the Scarab Pendant. If you know your opponent and you know they're absolutely going to be gaining 3 on their turn, go ahead and discard Robot Queen, play Extravagant. Get it back when you're ready. But if you know your opponent is able to consistently make cash, and you put them in, and they're in a situation that they can, like do it without gaining 3 on their turn, keep the Robot Queen in hand and just work around it. It's just something you will have to do. Because the worst thing that you can do to yourself is discard the Robot Queen. The opponent knows that, and now they're like, all right, they have Extravagant in their hand. There's no reason for me to gain 3 power. I can try to work around it based off what my situation is. But, like I said, Jafar is a perfect example. Needs to gain 3 power in order to play it. Can't gain power at any of the other locations. Extravagant. Because you also have to keep in mind, too, Jafar can play Necessary Sacrifice to gain 3. That's also another way to pop that. Because even if he needs to gain power and doesn't want to move there and moves to a different location of Fate, you can still pop it that way. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that's the conditions. Extravagant, like I said. Otherwise, if you don't need to worry about discarding the Robot Queen, mainly uses to get stuff back like tools and gears. I would say those are your 2 primary cards to get back. Other than that, the other items are kind of at your disclosure, what you want to grab. I would probably say if the Robes of the Bell get discarded, those are also probably 2 things you probably should grab. But other than that, if you do get this for some reason and you don't feel like you really need it at the moment, just discard it. Now, there's a question in the chat. And then I will get to some more general Q&A, and we'll also another thing. Do you kill or capture Olivia? This is kind of a general thing I'm going to say with all villains in this game. So, you know, we've seen a lot of talk about hero stacking with a particular character. Her name is Ursula. Now, I just want you to think about this. Let's say that, you know, we got Dawson, we got Mrs. Judson over here, we got Flaversham, and we got Olivia. All that stuff. You know, all those cards are there. Here's the thing. Those are 4 cards that are now not in your Fate deck, that are not being defeated. That means, and this also includes like stuff like, let's say, a Queen's Guards. All right? If we stack all that up back into this conglomerate of a mess over here, put that up. Your Fate deck went from 15 to 10, which means the likeliness of getting something bad that you don't want, like both of those, is very more high. What I like to try to do is I would like to try to keep it so there's only usually one character at the lair at all costs. Maybe two max. Flaversham and maybe somebody else. Cards like Olivia, you will need to defeat them and bite the bullet. Because, like I said, you want to get those back into the Fate deck so that way those really bad cards that you don't want to see that can cost you the game have a less frequency to come out. So defeat the heroes when they come out when they can. Capture when you absolutely feel like it's necessary. Like I said, stuff like if Queen's Guards are getting stacked at the Buckingham Palace and you need to get rid of them, use Capture. Obviously Flaversham's a really good example. Stuff like that. But in general, I would try to take out the heroes so that way stuff like Call for Help doesn't keep getting overused. The Mouse Queen doesn't get played out like we just literally saw in that turn. Because all that sucks. All that is brutal. It is not good. So kill stuff when you can. Yeah, Olivia's going to bring out another Fate card, but so be it. You just kind of have to accept it. But yeah, that is kind of my 2 cents. And that is with, honestly, every single villain. And I will say this probably for all the members of the cast. Every character has got some pretty detrimental Fate cards. Some have a little bit more consistency. Some of them are a little bit more swingy. But even with Ratigan here, like those 4 or 5 cards I put at the secret lair, a lot of the other cards in there were pretty bad. All of those sabotages can destroy things that I already had built up at the secret lair. Basil, Toby, Mouse Queen, Call for Help, all that's garbage. You don't want that coming out. So try to kill stuff when you can so that way you can just kind of clog up the Fate deck when it gets reshuffled, all that fun stuff. Alright, I think that is everything on the villain deck. So you're all probably wondering, hashtag Fate the Rat. Now, what does that look like? What do I do? What is the situations that are going to get brought up to make me sad on a daily basis when playing as the Rat? Let's kind of start off with some prime locations. Location number 1, I would say, is Buckingham Palace. So if you get a hero, play to Buckingham Palace. It's pretty brutal. The one thing you have to notice is that all the locations in the realm have a play card action at the bottom except for Buckingham Palace. Kind of ironically and thematically, that makes a lot of sense for it being up there. That's pretty brutal. Makes it so when Ratigan literally can't do anything super effective when he goes to the palace. So he can move something, which early game he's not going to be doing. He can gain a money, which is still good, and discard. But he's going to be less likely to go over here, which, if you go to Flaversham's Toy Shop, my next recommended location. Let's go ahead and actually lay this out as we go with heroes. So, Queen's Guards always get played there. Flaversham will probably get played there for some reason. So, reason for that. If you go here next, and they haven't taken out this location, guess what? Now they have to go here to discard, which is definitely something the Rat wants to do. So, their probably priority target will then be the Toy Shop, because this place is his combo location. 2 cards, discard, gain 3, all that stuff. He wants that location open. Another prime location, depending on where Ratigan is at the time. So, let's say Rat is already at Flaversham's. Playing a hero to Big Ben's not a bad call too. Because you gotta keep in mind is that when you play this here, Ratigan loses all utility at Big Ben. Can't gain 2 power, which you might use to immediately play a card. If he needs to move something, you can't move. And especially early game, he's not going to be vanquishing. At all. So he's going to be burning that extra action. Because something you'll probably notice a lot of Ratigan players do is that, let's say I gain 3 here. If this place doesn't get covered, gain 2. That's 5 power. He's already a third of the way towards his goal without... And granted, yeah, you're probably going to be spending some of that power to play cards, but you got to think about it too. If he goes to the toy shop and discards his entire hand and doesn't do anything with it, if he goes here, that's 5 power. That's an incredible lot of power. It's insane. So covering this up too is really solid. Obviously, you never want to play something to Secret Lair, with a few exceptions. Obviously, Basil, Mouse Queen, or Robot Queen, let's go ahead and bring her out, just for the sake of referencing stuff as we go. Playing Basil to Secret Lair obviously makes sense, especially if the Mouse Queen is not out and you know for a fact that they got the airship, all that stuff. And another time is that you see they got a lot of items over there stacking up. You haven't drawn any Sabotages. You might be tempted to go over here, play a hero and Sabotage stuff. Especially if it's a character like Olivia. That's actually a really solid time for the player to actually debatably think about vanquishing Olivia if she's at the Secret Lair. Because if Olivia's here and they're popping Sabotage and some really good stuff, you definitely want to get rid of that character. If they got rid of some really good stuff and you also have another card there you don't want to have go away, yeah, that might be a good time to play Olivia. It's almost like, yeah, we're going to force her to be captured and make it so, yeah, I have to think twice about, having a hero here for the time being. It's a solid call. What else? In terms of things, something I've noticed is that I think some people are afraid early game to use Call for Help or play Basil. I would actually strongly recommend doing so. I originally was kind of hesitant on this idea, but if you're early game, play Basil, a Baker Street out, oh my god, it is a dream come true. Because here's the thing you got to think about. Let's say you get the airship, you get the bell, maybe you start seeing heroes come out on the board over there, you play tools over there, robes over here. All of a sudden, Basil of Baker Street's like, I get played, I'm going to go over here, I'm going to wreck your day. There goes an item. Oh, guess what? Call for help? Guess what? Now I'm going to go over here, I'm going to start blocking your stuff. Discard another item. Oh no, I don't even have any money to play anything. I have no gears. Oh no, gets over here, blocks some other stuff, tools go away. You see what I'm talking about? And that's not in the fact that you still got Sabotage. Basil early game is brilliant. It is brilliantly designed thematically. The cards in the deck revolve almost around this character. Even with stuff like Toby. There are all sorts of stuff that you can use to abuse Basil. If you can play Basil early, do it. Because the thing you gotta think about too is that he has 6 strength. If he gets defeated before the Mouse Queen, he is able to discard the Mouse Queen, big whoop, especially if it's not even out yet. But man, this is a wrecking crew to be dealt with. Because like I said, 6 strength, doesn't have a lot of allies in the deck already that can do a lot of strength vanquishing. Definitely get Basil out. Something else to keep in mind too is that this makeshift balloon is busted. Is incredibly good. Now, if you do get something like makeshift balloon in Toby, and the makeshift balloon, or if Basil's out and the robot queen is not out, don't play makeshift balloon. Hold out on that card. Play another card if you can. Wait to use makeshift balloon for in the scenarios you absolutely have to take out the robot queen or dodge a kill. If Basil's played early, is it worth playing Felicia to deal with him or focus on setting up my setup? That is a great question. If Basil comes out early, I would not say directly focus on vanquishing Basil with Felicia, but definitely try to vanquish Basil. He, like I said, he is a force to be reckoned with. He's already strong. He is going to block locations, especially like if he gets played here and then you're like, all right, I don't want Sabotage to be destroyed. You might play items elsewhere. You also got to keep in mind too that if the opponent does play Call for Help, and even if there's not items out over here, they still have to move Basil. And that still means he's going to be blocking one of your primary locations of action economy. So I would strongly recommend try to take him out, but don't make it be your absolute prime focus. Like I said, especially if the Robot Queen's not out yet, you still need to focus on getting the Robot Queen out. But at the same time, you still want to actually, play defense. You want to set up allies to be able to vanquish stuff. That's part of this game is, taking care of the action economy by defeating heroes. And making it so there's some type of defense against them when they come out. So that's one of the reasons why Fidget is so good. Where is he? Where's the bat? Did I already discard him in that stack? Hold on. No? Where is he? Chat's like, he's right there. There he is. There you go. Come on, chat. He's a 3-strength ally. And you gotta think about it. If you play a uniform on him, you can take out the Mouse Queen. That's really strong. Because they're really solid allies. Now, the ultimate question is, Basil or Robot Queen. When you get that choice. Or, like, if you get a Robot Queen, or not Robot Queen, Mouse Queen. Mouse Queen and Call for Help. This is a tricky situation. And it depends on when everything is happening. If the Robot Queen is out, play the Mouse Queen. Reason why I say that is because I've seen plenty of games where what happens is that they get this option. They call Basil out, vanquish, or take care of the Robot Queen, you flip to the rat. Then what happens is that, let's say Fidget's out, alright? You go over here. Gain 3 money. You have Felicia in your hand. So we'll pull out Felicia. So you spend 3 money, discard the ally. Then, Uniform. Or, you know, they got a Ruffian. Play Ruffian to Big Ben and vanquish. You have to be absolutely careful as the fading player, knowing that if I play Basil, how likely is that player going to be able to kill him in the next turn? Because he's got tools. Because you also got to think about, this is what I was saying earlier with the Ruffians. Ruffians and maybe Fidget are going to be all over the place. And it's as easy as, I move here, I move this guy over, play a Uniform, done. Game over. It's in one turn. By you destroying one half of my goal, the game's over. I would play the Mouse Queen. Because you got to keep in mind this. There are 2 copies of Call for Help, and then there's Basil. So there are 3 cards, and technically a 15-card Fate deck. And with the Mouse Queen, even if the Robot Queen gets moved all the way over, it's going to take some time to defeat her. She has 5 strength. The only easable way of doing it is playing Felicia. And especially at that point, you're probably already drained of all your power to play Felicia. And even, like, let's say you didn't have any allies out, you're going to have to spend 5 power to keep her in bag. So, you got to think about that stuff. There's lots of things to think about when playing her out. The Mouse Queen, as literally I've seen destroy games with the rat before, where literally she gets played, the Mouse Queen's out, or the Robot Queen's out. Robot Queen's essentially at the win condition, but the Mouse Queen, it just isn't able to be defeated. There's just no way. Because at that point, it doesn't even matter if you play Basil out. You just play Basil out to a different location. Just setting yourself up for a Call for Help or Toby. Or a makeshift balloon. All sorts of stuff. You have to be on the lookout for that. And also, let's just shout out to Toby. Toby's a great card. Not only does he allow you to move stuff, he's also 6 strength. He's not going away anytime soon. You can't even capture him, which is also nice. So he has to be defeated. So if you get Toby, never ever play him to the secret lair. Never do it. Play him somewhere where it's going to take up a lot of resources to vanquish him to begin with. That's what I would do personally. Toby's a great card. Even if you can't move a hero, if you draw Toby and another like 2 strength hero, play Toby. You might burn his effect, but 6 strength out on the board is pretty resource heavy to get rid of. So, pretty solid call. Dawson is trash. Unless you cannot play anything else in the pool, any other card's better than Dawson. Mrs. Judson's actually really good. Now, granted, depending on what cards you get, there might be something better to play. But with Mrs. Judson, let's say if they're using the power ramp thing. You know, they're trying to gain lots of money to play the Robot Queen. Judson, 2. Get rid of 2 immediately. And you're taking up a slot on the board. Pretty solid. Yeah, she is capture fodder, but still. You can abuse Sabotage later in the game. Queen's Guards is nice. Because it basically essentially is saying, like, hey, guess what? Cover your top fate action immediately. No other way of doing it. They can't be played anywhere else. And that's not bad, because since there's 3 copies of them, if you do, or essentially if that's the only card you can play, and there's already one there, you're already, like, basically hero stacking out a location with a fate spot. That's pretty good. It's pretty solid. And then Olivia. Olivia, her only downside is the fact that she's 2 strength. No, she's 1 strength. Never mind. Wow. I thought she was 2. I play this character a lot. The thing is, she usually becomes capture fodder, but like I said, if she's over here and you know you're going to be pulling off some sabotages, especially early game against some really good items, you start thinking twice about if you want to, and the player has to think twice if they want her staying, and then she can trigger her ability, which is really solid. So, yeah, really good. Flaversham, I would really not play Flaversham unless you absolutely think they're not going to capture. Something else you got to keep in mind, too, is that if they do want to play Fidget, Flaversham, even if he's at the secret lair, will get moved back to the toy shop. So, that is one thing you can think about where, oh, I know one of their last allies is Fidget, and I want to screw up their action economy. So, you know, hey, Flaversham is already over here, and they absolutely need to play Fidget for whatever reason. All right, well, guess what? Flaversham is no longer attributing to the Mouse Queen's power reduction. So you got to think about stuff like that. But there you go. I think that is essentially everything. Fading the Rat is actually pretty relatively easy once you kind of know what the power cards are. I would generally wait to play the super powerful stuff except for Basil. Like the Mouse Queen. Well, really, the Mouse Queen's the only card. And the Makeshift Balloon until later game. Everything else can be probably played early game and not be a horrible detriment to yourself. Because all these cards are good. You just play them, and guess what? They're going to block stuff. And overall, if you're blocking the Rat's action economy, you are in a very solid spot. So, all right. In a situation that left Basil and the Mouse Queen, what is worth playing in the Fate action? If the Robot Queen is out in play, always play the Mouse Queen. If she is not out in play, then play Basil. Because you got to remember that the 2 call for helps will come back out. But you will have to keep in mind, maybe you need to know where Basil is currently in your deck. So that might also contribute to some things where if you're going to cause a full 15-card Fate deck reshuffle afterwards and Basil's in that mess, you might not want to do that and take the risk. Because that's a very low chance of him coming out, because that would be only 3 cards to pull out. But I would generally do the Mouse Queen. Because, like I said, that on its own right is going to block a lot of stuff. How frequently should you be fading him? Like all characters, every 2 to 3 turns. That's your answer. I will say this up front to everyone on the stream. This game is built around to fade every like second turn, so like your first turn, second turn, or vice versa. You know, that ratio, every 2 to 3 turn ratio, from early to mid game. After mid game, if you need to fate, 2 turns in a row, that makes sense because someone's achieved their goal. The problem is, and like I've said this before in the Discord, if you fate every single turn, the only way the opponent can stop you is to do the same thing. And then the game itself does not have all the resources built to be equipped to deal with all those situations. Because even if you see like my board state right here, let's say this is my board state. I got 4 or 5 heroes out on the board. Number one, that's going to make my Fate deck a lot less. And especially like in this case, so like Basil's out in the open. And since there's 10 cards left, let's say I start playing these heroes. Sabotage becomes incredibly good. Call for Help makes it so if for some godforsaken reason you're able to play the Robot Queen, it's destroyed. And then like even with that, if it's destroyed, you don't have enough of anything to do anything at that point. It's going to be incredibly slow. And with the fact that Call for Help can then be abused to move around Basil, because at that point there'll be a lot of stuff. 2-3 turns, every character, early to mid game. Late game, if you need to do it every other turn because they're at their win condition or close, makes sense. Characters are not equipped to do stuff. If you're playing against a Prince John, how heavily would you try to avoid gaining 6 or more power to avoid greed? Because Rat needs power. Is it too difficult to avoid? Yes. That is sadly one of the Ratigan's minor issues, is the fact that he's really good at gaining power and he kind of needs it to play the stuff he needs. But stuff like Greed and Ruthless is the stuff that you're just going to have to accept. Even other cards that have like gain 3, or like when someone gains 3 power, like Terror, you're just going to have to accept it. That's just one of the downsides, because you have to think about it this way. If I'm moving back and forth between Big Ben and Buckingham Palace, that's 3 power within a turn, or 2 turns. While Flaversham's Toy Shop, I can go here, 5 power within a turn. That's a lot more power. And then you can go back and forth between these two, which is a lot compared to doing this. You know, and it's the same thing too. It's like, and this goes back to what I was talking about fading every turn. You know, Rat needs the power. So if you never have Buckingham Palace blocked, going back and forth between these two spaces, how much power are you getting to be able to do anything? Not a whole lot. And guess what? The only thing the opponent can do back is fake you. So, yeah. You're just going to have... That's one of the conditions with the Rat you're just going to have to accept. Now, the nice thing, though, is in the Prince John matchup, even with Greed, if they're able to pop both their Greeds, chances are, at that point, you basically already have the Robot Queen out and moving. Or Basil is discarded the Robot Queen, you're out trying to kill him. So you're pretty late game at that point. I wouldn't worry too much about the goal, Prince John's goal, because even then, too, if you're really concerned about him popping Greed again when he's close and you've already at that situation, you can kind of teeter between Big Ben, Secret Lair, and Buckingham Palace and not worry about the toy shop unless you need to do some combo plays. So, you gotta keep in mind, too, that if you are in the late game, you need to play 2 cards and you don't need to gain power, you don't have to take that action. You don't have to. So if you think you could do your turn with the amount of power that you currently have, don't gain the money. Don't gain it. It's a really solid point, though. Thank you for bringing that up, Fluffy. What other questions we got? Fate the Rat. Hashtag Fate the Rat.